What's good, gang? Today we're going to dive a little deep. This is not going to be surface level at all. I just want to give a trigger warning because I'm going to be talking about toxic relationships, how somebody ends up in one, why the people stay, the whole 9 yards. We're going to get into it. The person who is in a toxic or abusive relationship is staying in this toxic or abusive relationship because the way that they're being treated is congruent with how they feel about themselves. The way this other person treats them or behaves around them is consistent with how they think that they should be treated or how they think that a person should behave in their presence. A lot of times, this person that they end up in this toxic relationship with will be very similar to their parents. Their behavior, the way that they act to this person, the way that they treat this person is going to be very consistent with the way that their parent was acting to them when they were a child. It's going to be familiar. It's going to seem as if this is normal. And they accept it because they have these feelings of low self-worth or a negative self-image. Because if they had higher self-esteem, they wouldn't tolerate it. Anybody who has high self-esteem, they're not going to take any mistreatment. They're not going to take somebody acting towards them in a way that they don't feel is congruent with their worth. They're going to be like, I can walk away from you. I don't deserve this. This is not how I get down. But if you're a person who subconsciously feels as if you are worth less, you will accept less. Essentially, their outer world is reflecting their inner world. As within, so without. I am being treated badly because on the inside, I feel like I am worth being treated badly. You know what I'm saying? This is a person who has developed this idea that the reason why I accept this behavior from this person is because I must be worth this person treating me and behaving this way. Because that's what my parents did. That's what my first caregivers did. That's what somebody did to me at an early age that has caused for me to have this sort of subconscious loyalty that I'm going to remain loyal to and keep perpetuating these patterns within my life. I feel like a piece of shit and this person treats me like a piece of shit. That's congruent. 1 + 1 = 2. If I feel like a piece of shit and then somebody decides that they want to treat me like the Queen of England, that's not congruent. That's 1 + 1 = 35. I don't know what that means. That doesn't make sense to me. I feel like a piece of shit. They should not be treating me like the Queen of England. That's not recognizable. That's not familiar. I don't understand that. That's frightening. That is crazy. I'm not worth that. I don't understand. Why would you treat me that way? Nobody's ever treated me that way. That's unfamiliar. So oftentimes, someone who endures these toxic relationships, if they ever do meet somebody who is actually nice to them, who treats them well, they're not able to accept it. And they're not able to accept it because they don't feel like it matches up. They don't feel like it's consistent with who they are. Their self-image will not permit. They're like, well, how could you possibly like me if I don't like myself? How could you possibly think that I'm worth anything if I feel like I'm worthless? That don't make no sense. Were you an idiot? Or are you lying to me? Is this a trick? Is this false? Are you trying to fool me? They will be defensive about it. They're going to be like, I can't really trust you. I've had trouble trusting anybody because anybody that I've ever trusted has let me down. The people who were closest to me, the people who were supposed to be the best for me in my formative years have destroyed my self-confidence and my self-esteem. How could you, this random stranger who's being nice to me, possibly be actually nice to me? That seems like a lie. That seems like a trick. They won't accept it. They will constantly be waiting for something bad to happen. Even if they decided that they wanted to give this person a chance, they're going to constantly be waiting for the bad thing to happen because that's what they're used to. That is the pattern that they're used to. They're used to things going negatively. They're used to this person somehow flipping out of this nice persona that they might have started out with and turned into a complete jerk. They're just used to that. So that's what they're going to be expecting. They're used to drama. They're used to chaos. They're used to disorder. And if they're not receiving it, they will cause it. They'll develop it. They'll bring it to the situation because that's what they're used to. A lot of these people stay in these toxic, negative relationships because it seems normal to them. It's what they're used to. It's what they're familiar with. This is what is comfortable. Anything else is going to feel foreign, and they're going to be threatened by this foreign feeling. It's going to throw them off. They're going to be taken aback. They're not going to be able to accept it. The human mind is designed to come to a conclusion about everything that is happening within our worlds, even if it's coming up with the wrong conclusion. Even if it's coming up with a terrible assessment, whatever assessment it comes up with is what it believes to be truth. It will absolutely always try to figure out a way to give order to what seems to be in disorder. Even if that means to warp your sense of reality to think that chaos and disorder is the natural way of life. and that this is just how things are and how they're supposed to be. And because these are the patterns that you've established based on these reinforced beliefs, if you try to engage in something positive and something wholesome, you will be insecure and questioning yourself about how to behave in this relationship. Like literally, how do you behave in a normal, healthy relationship? How do you trust someone? How do you accept for somebody to treat you well? What are healthy boundaries? Which then causes the fear to arise for this person to decide to tuck tail and go back to those patterns that you're used to, which then begins to project these irrational fears onto this other person. As in, what if this person is actually secretly worse than everything I've ever endured? What if I allow myself to get comfortable? I allow myself to let my guard down, and then this person lets me down even worse than anybody else let me down? It's going to be such a far fall. It's going to be so hard. It's going to be so difficult that I can't stand it. I can't take it. I can't take that kind of pain. I can't take that kind of disappointment. I can't open myself up and allow myself to feel that kind of hurt again. It was hard enough dealing with it from that parent, from that initial caregiver, from that initial person that I trusted. It was difficult enough then, but to then experience it with this new person that I put my heart and soul into, that I trust, that I believe is going to do the right thing. If they let me down, it's just going to be the end of my world. So why would I take that chance when I could just be with a jerk? When I could just be with this abusive person? When I could be with this person who reminds me of my crazy mom or my crazy dad? I might as well stay with the devil that I do know, getting poked in that hell, rather than trying to find out whether it is a new devil or a new hell. I might as well continue suffering in the hell I know with the devil I know, than find out that there's a worse devil and a worse hell. Which now leads into the reason why people stay in these toxic, abusive, negative relationships, and that is because it is like a drug. A person that you are in love with can be like a drug. It could be like gambling, the slot machine effect of the randomness of the ups and downs of a toxic relationship is what causes most people to stay, because they view it as exciting. They view it as an exciting thing to not know what's going to happen, especially if there's somebody who grew up in an environment that was chaotic and disorderly, that was completely random, that had no sort of consistency within it. They're going to continue to follow those patterns because that's what they're used to. The unpredictability is what makes it exciting. It's the fact that you just don't know what's happening around the corner. You could either be having a really high moment with this person, or you could be having a really low moment with this person. But those high moments are so worth it in comparison that you're going to endure the low moments just to get the high moments. It's essentially like a drug. You're going to just continue coming back over and over and over again, despite how bad you crash, despite how hungover you feel, to chase that high. In comparison, something that seems normal and healthy is going to seem boring. It's going to seem as if there's some passion lacking, as if something is missing. And that's just based on these childhood wounds. So let's start from the beginning. How does somebody find themselves in a toxic or abusive relationship? Well, 9 times out of 10, this stems from trauma in the childhood. In most cases, people who end up in toxic relationships have had something happen in their childhood that caused them to develop a low self-worth and a negative self-image. So how does a child develop a hypothesis of low self-worth or a negative self-image? By analyzing everything that is happening to them by their parents, by their caregivers, by the environment around them. They develop this identity and this idea of themselves based on the circumstances that are happening to them or the way that they are being treated. Let's say, for the sake of argument, your parent was physically abusive. If your parent used to hit you at a very early age, you're going to develop a complex about being hit because your brain is not fully formed yet. Because your brain is not fully formed yet, you don't have the full scope of rationality to come to a sound judgment as to why you are being hit. They could be hitting you because their parent hit them when they were a child, and they're just continuing this cycle of abuse onto you. They could be hitting you because they're having mental health issues, some sort of disorder that's causing them to disassociate, and they're just being violent. They could be hitting you because they're on drugs and they have no recollection of the fact that they were hitting you. They could be hitting you because they're just an asshole. They could be hitting you for any number of reasons, but your brain is not able to come up with a fully rational, sound judgment as to why you're being hit. All you know is that you're being hit. So now, obviously, your brain is going to come up with some solution as to what is the reason that my parent is hitting me. Well, obviously, I must be worth getting hit. So instead of looking outwardly and coming to a conclusion based on the circumstances that are around you or this parent that is acting illogically, you look inward. You look inward and you point the blame at yourself. So once you start looking inwardly, you determine within yourself that the reason why I'm getting hit must be because I have a low self-worth. I must not be a good person. I must be a bad child. I must be a bad seed. There must be something wrong with me. I must be defective. There must be some sort of negative thing about me, and that is the reason why this affliction is being put on me. I couldn't be suffering for no reason. You don't have the wherewithal to be thinking to yourself that this adult is acting out of character. This adult is irresponsible. This adult is a bad person. This adult is in the wrong. Your brain's not functional enough to come to that conclusion yet. So you internally stamp yourself with low self-worth and a negative self-image. You have to understand, in the mind of a child, a parent is this all-knowing figure, right? It's this person with impeccable judgment, with flawless character. It's our first instance of a caregiver. This is all we know. This is all we've been exposed to. So therefore, anything they say or anything they do is law. There must be a reason. There must be a rationale, a morale for the reasons why they do what they do. So obviously, if they're mistreating you, if they're doing something wrong to you, and in that childlike state of mind, you believe that there's a reason. I must deserve it. You take their bad parenting and what they do to you as a declaration of your value. 1 + 1 = 2. I am being abused because I must be somebody who is worth being abused. And this applies to any version of bad parenting or abuse or any sort of misconduct with a parent or a caregiver. You're going to come to the conclusion based on the circumstances that are happening to you, not based on the person that is doing the thing. I'm being neglected because I must be somebody who's worth being neglected. I'm being yelled at and torn asunder verbally from somebody because I must be somebody who's worth being yelled at. I must have did something that was wrong. My parent left me and never came back. They abandoned me, so I must be somebody worth being abandoned. I must not be worth sticking around for. I have to take care of my parents, so obviously their needs come before mine. I must be somebody who needs to take care of others at all costs. I gotta people please because I gotta take care of this parent who should be taking care of me. But obviously I'm not enough. I gotta take care of my parents, so their worth must be higher than mine. Forget about me, forget about my feelings, forget about what I want, forget about my desires. I need to take care of my parents, so therefore I become a people pleaser. My parent is consistently choosing someone or something over me. You know, they're choosing this person over me. They're choosing this drug or this substance over me. They're choosing something over me. So obviously, I must not have enough value or worth for you to choose me first, for you to put me above them, for you to put me above this thing. I must not be worth anything. I must not be enough. I must have to be more because obviously, if I was enough, you would choose me. But you're not. Somebody is touching me inappropriately and it is making me uncomfortable, but they're not stopping. So my consent must not mean anything. It must not mean anything. My whole worth as a being must be nothing if you can't stop when I'm asking you to stop. My physical well-being, my body, my emotions, my boundaries, they are not being treasured. They're not being cared for. They're being swept aside. This person does not give a flying hoot about how I feel. So therefore, I must be worthless. I must be worthless because nobody did anything to stop it. Nobody was there for me. Nobody was looking out for me. Nobody cared about me. So I must not be somebody worth caring about. These are the ideas that get cemented in your brain at such an early age. In these formative years, between your birth to like 8. Those are the most important years of your life to come to certain conclusions in your subconscious. Your subconscious is taking in all this data like a sponge. And when all these negative things happen to you, obviously, it ain't going to turn out right. These conclusions that you come to are called a subconscious loyalty. This is an idea that you formulate in your mind that you want to stick to. Regardless of whether or not it's a positive thing or a negative thing, it's this idea of something that you decide is fact, that you just want to hold on to, you want to stick to. You are loyal to it subconsciously. It is a subconscious loyalty. They're cemented in our brains and they incubate over time until they manifest themselves into our future relationships. Your subconscious will reason and ration in any sort of way to remain congruent with this idea of the level of self-worth that you have, with this negative self-image, with this idea of who you might be. And it will continue to perpetuate any sort of cycle, any sort of pattern that it needs to reinforce this belief. And just to put this out there, in some cases, the parent actually didn't do anything that bad. In some cases, a child just had some sort of experience happen to them that their subconscious took as something traumatizing. You know, the mind can come up with anything and make anything traumatizing in those early ages. And if it decides that it wants to harbor this information, this data in a negative way, it will. Our brains as a child can take any sort of situation, any sort of circumstance that happens around us, and attribute it to feelings of low self-worth or a negative self-image. Something that was actually a minor experience could have been received and interpreted as completely catastrophic, something totally traumatic to that child. And they take that information and then they use it in the future to establish these ideas of their self-worth. And just to reiterate, this is not solely based on things that your parents have done. This can also be based on the things that you may have seen or endured or witnessed of circumstances in your surrounding environment. Going back to the physical abuse thing, let's say your parents did not hit you, but they hit your sibling. Let's say your parents hit each other instead, and you witnessed your parents hitting each other. Let's say your sibling used to hit you, and your parents didn't do anything about it. Maybe you used to see someone in your family, your older sister, your cousin, your aunt, like somebody being abused in their relationships, and you take that on. It's just all these different circumstances that can happen around you that you could absorb this information and take within yourself. That even if this thing did not happen to you, you are recognizing these patterns to be what is normal, to be considered what is just supposed to happen, and you can take that on for yourself and reenact it within your own life. Sometimes it has nothing to do with your family at all, or even your childhood. Sometimes it is developed during an early relationship that you can embark on. You might have got into something with somebody way too early and developed this negative cycle and this negative pattern in relationships based on this early relationship you've been in with this one person who screwed you up. Toxic is not immune to any age. You could be enduring some sort of toxic relationship at any point that you decide to start interacting with another person. But going back into the reason why people decide to stay in these toxic relationships is usually because of this emotional roller coaster. It is the high highs and the low lows in the Russian roulette style of not knowing what's going to come next. It's exciting enough for you to want to continue enduring all the negativity as a consequence of getting the high of being with this person. Let's use the fight to physical intimacy pipeline for an example. A lot of times in these toxic relationships, the couple will get into some sort of argument, some sort of dispute, a disagreement. Essentially, they get into a fight, right? And this fight could be a verbal fight or it could be a physical fight. At the end of the day, it is a low low. But despite the fact that it's a low low, it is a part of the emotional roller coaster, so it's going to eventually end up in a high high. So the person's going to endure this low low in order to get to the high high. And during this argument, there's all sorts of emotion that is being let out. It's an emotion-fueled argument, an emotion-fueled dispute in which this person is feeling all of what they might perceive as passion from their partner, right? They're receiving some sort of energy from their partner, whether it's positive or negative. It's energy being applied to them, and they feel as if this means that this person cares. They only could argue with them if they care, right? So they're just taking it as love in their own sick, twisted way. And eventually this low, low transitions into a high, high by them deciding they want to end the fight and they want to make up. And somehow all this energy, all this emotion that has been put towards this fight, this dispute that may have ended up in a physical altercation or verbal harassment, that culminates by transitioning into the high, high of physical intimacy. All of a sudden they decide, instead of arguing, they want to make up. You know, they want to love on each other now. Now they want to make love. And all of a sudden, it transitions from this argument, this yelling at each other, this screaming at each other, this hurting each other, this hitting each other, into making love, into making out, and having this passionate sex, right? And this person is fooling themselves and deluding themselves into thinking that because of all of that, this energy, this emotion that they put into the argument, that it means that this partner cares about them in some weird, sick, twisted way. And they come to this pattern of wanting to continue to do this thing over and over again. They now want to incite these fights. They want to have these arguments, these disputes, because they know at the end of this dispute, it's going to end up in this passionate sex. That's the carrot at the end of the stick. That's the reward that they get for this toxic cycle that they're in, this negative pattern that they're engaging in. It was a low low that transitioned into a high high. It is an emotional roller coaster. And they're willing to endure the negativity in order to get to this one thing that they perceive as positive. Let's use another example. Let's say you got a partner that's love bombing you. This person is constantly giving you gifts. This person is constantly showing you affection. They're touching you. They're hugging up on you. They're kissing up on you. They're giving you these words of affirmation and telling you how much you mean to them and how great of a person you are and how much they care about you and just every sort of thing that seems to be right. But in the very second that you have a disagreement with them or you do something that they don't like, they take it all away, right? They take it all away. They taking the gifts back. They return them to the store. They're verbally harassing you, calling you out your name, telling you all kinds of this and that. You know what I'm saying? It's like this person just completely flips the script, but the emotional roller coaster, the high highs and low lows of whether or not this person is going to be nice to you today or be mean to you today, it's this gambling, this Russian roulette feeling of I don't know what's going to happen today. But when it's good, it's good. So I stick around for the good, even though it doesn't matter how many bad times we're going to have. You know, it's that gambling effect. It's like a person who will spend all this money on them scratch-off tickets, and they'll do it because occasionally they'll win a couple bucks or two, but all that money that they spent on the scratch-off tickets that were losing tickets, it's not worth it. But it's worth it to them, though. And that's the thing about these toxic relationships. Nobody ever starts on level 10. They slowly ease their way into figuring out how far they can take it with this person. You know, if we go back to the physical abuse thing, it's like the person doesn't start off with beating you to a pulp. They slowly go inch by inch. You give them an inch, they take a mile. You know, it first might start with them flicking you on your hand or something like that. Then it could turn into them grabbing your hand aggressively. Then it could turn into them yanking your arm. And then from yanking your arm, now it's hitting your arm. And then from hitting your arm, now it's hitting your face. You know, and then from hitting your face, now it's actually beating you on the regular. It doesn't start at level 10. It transitions slowly but surely over time into something that is worse for this person. For the fellas out there, it doesn't start with old girl breaking your belongings and keying your car. No. She starts on the smaller end of the spectrum by throwing your phone across the room or, you know, something like that where it's a minor inconvenience that eventually will build its way up because she's testing to see how far she can go. You give her an inch, she's going to take a mile. That's just how things go with these abusive people. It's like they need to make sure that they've built up enough time and investment of emotional energy that you've poured into them in order for them to see how far they can take it with you. They got to keep on testing you. If they did it from the first time that they met you, you would immediately be turned off because it's like, what are you doing? And the reason why it doesn't start at level 10 is because there hasn't been enough investment that has been built up through the momentum of time and energy that is spent with a person. This person needs to know how far they can take it with you based on how much time and energy you invest on them. There's a lot of people that if the first sign they sense some sort of abuse or misconduct, they will flee, they will leave, they're not going to take it. And for some people, they might take a little bit more stages before they decide to up and leave. But the person who's truly abusive, they know the victim that they're going to pick. They know the kind of person that they want to be after. And it's the kind of person who's going to endure this treatment as far along as they can take it. They don't start out at level 10. They slowly inch their way there. But that person has to allow this to happen in order for it to happen. And I want to make this abundantly clear. When it comes to these negative, toxic relationships with abusive partners, women are not the only people who are the victims of these situations. There's plenty of men out there that are enduring all kinds of tragic, horrible behavior from their partner that just are not speaking about it, don't feel comfortable speaking about it. There's definitely a stigma that is associated with men who are being abused by their partner. So, you know, this is definitely like a topic of discussion for a whole nother video in itself. But like, I just want to make sure that I'm mentioning here, that I'm making it clear that this is not a one-sided thing, or that this sort of discussion is not only reserved for women. There's a lot of crazy women out there. There's a lot of women who are doing awful, horrible things, and it probably stems from their childhoods and things that have happened with them as well. But at the end of the day, there's women who are keying men's cars and, you know, breaking their belongings and telling them that they can't hang out with their friends and keeping them from experiencing all sorts of experiences with people and separating them from their families and, you know, accusing them of stuff that they didn't do. Just all kinds of craziness. There's crazy women out there that are doing abusive things to men, and this needs to be called out. And, you know, no behavior that is toxic is inherently specific to just one gender. It happens all across the board, and the people who are enduring these toxic negative relationships have subconscious loyalties of low self-worth and low value of self and low self-esteem and a negative self-image, just all that sort of stuff, all that baggage that is associated with a person who would endure a toxic relationship. In fact, I would argue that there's a lot of men who are enduring these negative relationships that have absolutely no idea that they're actually in one. They're just accepting whatever behavior that is happening to them because they feel as if this is just normal and this is just the way women act or whatever. They've been sold some kind of lie, and based on their low self-esteem, they're just allowing themselves to have this woman behave this way in front of them and accepting it. But that's not really cool. It's not kosher. It's not great that anybody is having to endure this or deal with this. Abuse comes in many forms. Disorderly behavior comes in many forms, and we just need to address it. If you are somebody who is currently in an abusive relationship or a toxic relationship, something that's showing all the signs of a negative attachment to someone or a negative codependency with someone, I would suggest that first things first, you just understand that it's happening. Be conscious of it, be cognizant of it. Like, start calling yourself out and start being like, is this healthy? Is this really normal? Should I be allowing these sorts of things to happen? Should I allow this person to behave this way in my presence? Should I allow these things to happen to me? From there on, I need you to start challenging those subconscious loyalties. Start asking yourself the tough questions. Why do I feel unloved? Why do I feel unworthy? Why do I feel like it's okay for this person to cheat on me? Why do I feel like it's okay for this person to hit me? Why do I feel like it's okay for this person to say the things that they say to me? You have to start asking yourself those questions and start digging deep to figure out why you have feelings of low self-worth, why you don't value yourself, why you don't care about yourself enough to leave, why you don't care about yourself enough to challenge this person or stick up for yourself. You got to start asking the tough questions here. This is not a simple process at all. This is definitely going to cause you to have to do some shadow work, some deep diving, some journaling, maybe some therapy, just all these different resources that you might want to start backing into to try to figure out how you can heal and change your dynamic that you have with relationships in general. Because this is not healthy, it's not suitable for your growth, and in some scenarios, it's actually very, very harmful and can result in people losing their lives. So, at the end of the day, I'm just advocating that people really start making better decisions and better choices. And furthermore, especially if you end up having children in the mix of this, to not continue this cycle that is now going to imbue this idea of what is acceptable or what is normal onto the next generation of children. Just think about that. I understand that it is hard to challenge this version of yourself. For some people, this voice in the back of your head is actually very loud and you're very aware of it. You interact with it on a regular basis of it telling you that you're worthless or whatever. But for some other people, this could be very sunken deep down in a subconscious place that you're unaware of, that you're going to have to dig up and uproot and realize that you've been telling yourself these things all along. This is not going to be a simple process. There's probably going to be a lot of tears and emotions involved. It's going to be something that is going to take a lot of time to heal from and repair from. So, don't think that this is a walk in the park. Don't think that anybody and everybody is able to do it, because there's a lot of people who've been avoiding it who will never do it. And that is the reason why the world is as messed up as it is. And in fact, it's probably the reasons why your parents or the people who have done things to you have done things to you, because they needed to heal from the things they needed to heal from and they didn't. So, this is a process. Just trust the process. You can't heal what you don't feel. So go on ahead and feel through this. Either way, I really just wanted to have this discussion about abusive and toxic relationships. And I'm hoping that if you're in one or you're experiencing any sort of signs, that you can recognize them and try to get yourself out of it. I want us to heal. I want us to grow. I want us to transition out of these negative patterns that are holding us down. And I hope that your life is going to get better by just watching this video. Like, truly, I do. I've seen a lot of people go through a lot of things, and it's horrible. And this isn't dedicated to just one gender. It's not just for women. There's a lot of men who are being abused too, and they're not talking about it. But hey, at the end of the day, we're opening up the discussion here, and I just wanted to talk about this with y'all. So, I hope this is helping. If you've ever been struggling with self-confidence and self-worth and self-esteem, I got a video for you. You can watch it right here. And if you're ever wondering how to love yourself or what loving yourself looks like, got another video for that. It's right here. So check that out. But you already know, if you've been watching, if you've been listening and paying attention for this long, I gotta thank you. I gotta tell you that I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart, because realistically, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I appreciate that. So much love. I hope to see you in the next one. All right, peace.